you for being here this afternoon. I wish I could have brought some sunshine with me for you, but that piece was out of my control. My name is Claire O'D, and I'm a grief specialist at the Grief Centre at a Grace in Madison. Sometimes people get confused. We are part of the larger organisation, the Grace Hospice Centre, but our offices are on the just off McKee Road on Marketplace. So if you ever happen to have an appointment, just always check out where exactly you are going to in advance, because most people assume they're just going to the place on Sherrill Avenue and then get there and we have them scheduled. So this afternoon I'm coming to talk to you and share a little, and I want you to share with me too. So it's kind of a very informal, open discussion. It looks rather fancy and formal when we have a screen up and that, but not at all. We want to kind of just get some, if you have questions, please ask them throughout the presentation, comments, anything like that. We're here to enjoy whatever, have we 45 minutes or, yeah, time together this afternoon I should say. So, as I said, I work with a Grace as a grief specialist. At a Grace Centre, we offer 4 sessions to anyone going through grief, regardless of when or where the person passed. If you'd like some grief support, you can come and avail of those 4 sessions. You can schedule them once a week for 4 weeks, once every other week for 8 weeks, or so on and so forth. We also offer a lot of groups there to help people on their grieving journey. Groups such as partner, spouse, loss group, grief through journey group. If you ever need some support in grief, your best bet would be to just call our centre. And I have some brochures here on it, and I'll have those available to you. And talk to them there about her secretary is Jodie, and she's absolutely wonderful. And she will, if you're like, I think I want to do one-on-one counselling, or I want to go to a group, or whatever you might be, just let us know what you're looking for, and we can get you placed in whatever most suitable place is for you. All our services are fee-paying if you can afford to pay, non-fee if you can't, and we don't ask any questions about that. We want everyone that wants to use our services to have access to them, regardless of fees. So, all of us at different times in our lives are just out of money, or is running short, and so on and so forth. And so, if you want to give like a donation towards it, if you don't want to pay anything at all, that's okay. The important piece that I want to assure you that it is a community service, and it's there for you when you need it, and we never want money to be a barrier to using the services. I work there part-time, 20 hours a week, which I love that balance of 20 hours at work and time at home. It works well for me because I have a daughter that's still a sophomore in high school, and it's a great team to work with. I can honestly say that this is the best job I've ever had, and I've been in the counselling social work field for almost 40 years. So that's a good thing to say about your place of employment. Great organisation to work for. They really, really care about those they serve, and that makes me good. I always enjoy going to work there, and that's a gift to be able to say that. What else about our services? So yeah, we can have some more questions on that, or more information if you want. But for now, we just move on to the presentation, and as I say, feel free to get up and move around if you need to, if sitting for too long is too much, or you need to get some water or use a restroom or whatever. That's great. Can everyone hear me okay? How's the accent?
Great, we love it.
Where are you from?
I'm from Ireland.
Oh,
I grew up there and lived there for about 30 years before I moved to the US in 1993. And I came with my husband to the US for his job, and it was originally supposed to be like a 2-year contract, and then it became a 3-year contract, and you know the story after that. We're still here. We're still here, and we love our life here. I have 3 daughters, one who's a nurse at Frederick Hospital in Milwaukee, one is a senior at Marquette College in Milwaukee, and our youngest, Nora, is a sophomore at West. And I live in the Fitchburg area, which is really convenient for work as well, because I think no matter how long I live in the US, I'm never as good as the natives at the winter driving. That still kind of freaks me out a bit. So
How does the weather compare here compared to home?
well, it never gets as cold or as hot as it does get here. There aren't the extremes. Spring, in fact, I came back from Ireland last a week on Monday. I didn't quite get to be there for St. Patrick's Day, but I was there in the lead up to it. And all my family is living there too, as is my husband's family. So the temperatures was like in the upper 50s. Spring is earlier, and that's why I love going there at this time of year, because all the spring flowers are in bloom. And when it's still brown out here, it's nice. And this week, I just checked out on their temperatures there this morning, and they're in the close to 60 and sunshine, and very little rain. Which very little rain is a special time in Ireland, because it does tend to get a lot of rain. Trust me, it's not only the books are telling you that or the meteorologist, it does. But people live a lifestyle, rain doesn't bother them, you know? They just always dressed for rain. They walk to the schools to pick up their children, and you know, the children are put into clothes suitable and so on and so forth. So it doesn't stop people. Like, we here, if we think about, oh, it's raining out, I don't want to go out for a walk and get all wet or whatever, people just do it there, because if you didn't, you know the alternative. You're going to be home for a while. So that's a little bit about Ireland. You know, COVID was as bad there as it was here. COVID numbers are, unfortunately, we think we have reading right now that there's a new variant. Unfortunately, and they're concerned about the same things politically, the same thing about Ukraine. They're, have a lot of refugees coming to Ireland right now. So they're the same, like, we're many miles apart, but similar kind of concerns. COVID and Ukraine crisis at the moment seem to be the big headlines. So today they asked me to come and talk a little bit about grief. For all of us, grief comes to us all at some point in our life. None of us here will escape it, and we all have had our own personal experiences with grief that impact our lives. And you know, it's the one thing in life we know that it's going to happen. We're going to lose loved ones. And yet, it's a subject we do not like to talk about. And it's very natural that we don't want to talk about it, because it's painful and it's sad and it can be hurtful in a whole range of emotions. But talking together about grief is one of the most important things we can do as a community. And that's why I'm happy. I go out, I'm in Baraboo on Thursday of this week, talking about grief as well. So it's good that we're talking about it. That's very healthy. So today we have some goals or things that I'd like to accomplish, and they include increasing your understanding of what grief is and what are some of the common reactions to it. We all know that generally people cry a lot in grief, but there are other emotions people feel too. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll look at how we can support each other in times of grief. And finally, I'll touch on as well COVID and how we respond to grief in COVID times, because that changed completely all the things we did, our rituals, not being able to be with people. Go ahead.
At one time, sometime back, a friend who was volunteering in hospice said that the person who was dying, the patient, had become resolved to their fate. Mm-hmm. And grief was not as big a concern as for their loved ones who are just having a real trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. You often, people, when I'm working with people and I'll ask them about what supports they have in their life. And very often the answer to that for many people is their faith. A huge reliance on faith at the time of loss. The opposite can also occur though, that people turn away from their faith or spiritual aspirations because they feel angry, like, why did this happen? How come it's me? I thought there was a God there that was going to help me, and I feel so alone and desolate. So it can go either way in it. We do have at our Grace Hospice Centre chaplains available and spiritual directors there too, that if you so wish, you can have time with them in that process, in the dying process. Which is often nice to just be able to talk, but even though it's difficult. So what is grief? I like to sum it up in a statement when I say, grief is the price we pay for love. We have a loved one in our life. Therefore, when they leave us, we experience grief. So it goes hand in hand. The more you love, the more you grieve. And grief is a natural response to any kind of loss. And when I say any kind of loss, I'm not only referring to the death of a spouse or a family member, but it also can be, you could have a financial loss, you could have the loss of your house, the loss of your job, the loss of a pet. How big is that? And how painful is that for so many people? There are many ways grief can occur after many different kinds of losses. And many times we use the same coping strategies or ways we've coped in the past, and we ask ourselves, how can they help us now? It is the process of adapting to life without that person. It's not something when people ask, will I get over this? It's not something you get over. Like there's a beginning and end to grief, a beginning, middle, and end to grief. Unfortunately, there isn't. We're on the grief initially. We're grieving hard. We may have times when we feel more in control of it, and it can be triggered months, years later by other things that happen in our life, or on special occasions such as birthdays or anniversaries or holidays, for example. They can also trigger our grief. So it's a very good idea to keep that in mind and to acknowledge it for ourselves before we sit around the Thanksgiving table and suddenly, all of a sudden it dawns on you that person is not there, and all of a sudden you're overwhelmed with grief. Anticipating that can be helpful. Just knowing it's going to be different this year. We may have to do a little different tradition, different ritual, because that person is no longer there. It's not something people come in and say, can I solve it or fix it, the grief? I wish I could, but unfortunately I can't, and I have to be upfront about that. But we use tools, and one way is the talking about our losses and how they're affecting us. That's one of the best tools we have to help with grief journey. So it's just accepting the person that is grieving where they're at, having a good day, not having a good day, whatever it might be. It might change throughout the day. You know, grief does change. It's never the same from one day to the next. It's not something that we can fix, but we can give you some tools that can help you cope with the loss. And that's the important piece there. There is no timeline, no magical finish. I can tell you in 6 months, I hope in 6 months you're feeling better, but I'm not guaranteeing it. Some people regress in their grief. They can actually, after they get over, you know, the initial shock and adapt to the new way of life without someone. They're okay for a while, and something triggers it, maybe their birthday, or even something around your house. You find a piece of clothing, or you find a song comes on, or a book just appears, and you remember your loved one reading that book, or how much you enjoy that music, or they're all triggers. And we respond to them because we are in a grieving process. We're feeling very raw at that time. No two people grieve in the same way. Some people do a lot of crying. Some people think that because you're not crying, you're not sad or lonely. That's just an assumption. People do it in different ways. Some people become very quiet and withdraw. Other people just want to be left alone, just to want to go to a quiet place. Some people indulge themselves in work, whether at home or in the workplace, just want to be busy all the time with the thought that I don't want to think about it, I don't want to think about it. But, you know, it is and it can be a helpful strategy to use, being busy all the time. But we have to be careful. It doesn't mean it'll go away. It's still there, so we have to be busy, but at the same time give ourselves a space, a time every day that we can acknowledge how we're feeling and what's going on. That's kind of my strategy is I like to keep busy and doing things, but grief will always come out, no matter how we try to cover it up, however we try to not feel those feelings. It'll come out somewhere. Suddenly we have backaches, or with pains and aches in places that we didn't have any injury or don't know why we're feeling this pain. But very often is we hold that grief somewhere in our body. We can be, of course, anxiety, can come out in anxiety and depression, but it will come out. So the best time to grieve is after the loss of a loved one. It is really, and be gentle with yourself. We constantly remind people, you know, if you need to sleep longer, sleep longer. If you need to eat more, eat more. If you want to go on more walks, go on more walks. You want to take a longer bath or shower, whatever, just to make you feel comfortable. Do all these self-help things that are good for you. You know, we might dismiss them and say, oh, you know, I can't be pampering myself, and I don't need this and I don't need that. But you do need it. You do need it after the time of a loss of someone in your life. Any questions or comments on that? Yeah, you know all this. We're just reminding ourselves. What can help us? Why are we more at grief sometimes more than in others? Well, grief is always based on the relationship we had with that person. It is, as I said earlier, it is the price we pay for love. So if there was a deep, loving relationship, the grief is hard. Grief can also be very hard if the relationship with the person that passed wasn't great, because what comes up then is a lot of regrets. I wish I had spent more time. I should have gone over to visit them more often. That day when I saw that person crying, maybe they had got results of some tests, they had medical examinations or tests they had done. Was I available, or did I just pretend not to see it and move on? So it's not to say that if we weren't, there wasn't a strong relationship that we don't grieve. It can certainly happen. Grief response also is very much related to the circumstances of the death. What happened, how it happened, was it expected, was it a sudden death? The age of the person can also impact. What's coping skills? And this is something we often forget when we are grieving, is to look at what I have done in the past that has been helpful to me in coping with loss. Can anyone think of anything that comes to mind? Anything you have used in the past in your own life that has helped with coping with loss?
I think of getting busier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
busy, yeah.
You know, just kind of diving into work and.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
moving.
I think talking about it, because there's a saying, and right now, of course, I can't remember, but nobody really dies if you keep talking about them.
Yeah.
You know, you talk to your relatives and your parents, you know, or you talk to your friends. Just talking about it, which is hard sometimes to do.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I had a dog that all those things apply. I mean, I was lost. I've never grieved so much in my life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So,
Yeah.
sounds crazy.
No, it's not crazy. And let never anyone dismiss that grief or think, well, it'd be worse if you lost your spouse or something. It's not worse. This dog was part of your life and part of your family, and you got so much affection and you cared for that so deeply. It's a huge thing for people, is the loss of dog. More so now that, you know, in years gone by, well, I know at least in Ireland, dogs were dogs.
Yep.
They were kind of farm animals and didn't spend as much time in the house, and they were used with sheep or cattle or something. They were functional if you lived on a farm. But today they're like other people in one house. They are a person. I don't have a dog myself, but my daughter has a dog, and I love that dog so much. I love having her and taking her for walks and taking care of her. And she's a lot of work too. You know that piece. You had a comment.
Just to add more, I think reminiscing, whether you're with your family members, just, you know, the memories and what you remember, and when one doesn't remember, the other does.
Yeah.
And I think also with friends, when you can compare stories and how you got through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be given advice, you know, you should do this and you should do that. But you can say, well, no, here's what I did, and I found this helpful. I'm just sharing it with you. You might find it helpful, or you may not. Yeah, so that's a really good point. Again, I'm going to hop over to
I was
this.
just gonna say, I wrote letters
Yeah.
to the person.
Yeah, yeah. Many people find the letter writing. And especially I often suggest it to people who they say, I wish I had more time. There was things I wanted to say. And you can always write that. You can go, if you have a graveside or a memorial or whatever, you can always share it there. You can share it in the privacy of your own home. Many people find journaling helpful, writing down memories or writing down things they said, and hopefully it brings a smile someday. And it's not always painful. But yes, yeah, the reminiscing, the telling the stories, hearing from other people, relatives or work people, of the one that you lost, hearing stories about them and their life can be very helpful. That's kind of a little jig going on there.
But I have a question.
Of course.
So what about friends and family going the other way, that you can tell like they're like already like sick of hearing about it? You know, I mean, because like with some friends, you know, you talk about it, but then they change the subject.
Oh.
Like they don't want, you know, like I kind of like, I heard enough about it already.
Yeah.
I don't want, you know, I mean, and you can feel it
Oh, yeah.
because,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
it's there.
Yeah. It's a very good point.
I have a question. I had a family member pass away. That family member had serious mental illness issues and just a lot. And so funny because last night my daughter and it's true, I always say negative things about him. Because I think I'm still angry at him for a lot of the things he did and hurt my parents, and, you know, a lot of stuff. And so she kind of jumped on me about, well, you know, I still love him. I wish he was still here. Why do you hate him? I don't like it when you say things like that, you know. I don't hate him, but I don't want him back. I mean, you know, and she's like saying to me, that's not right, he's dead. And I said, well, because somebody's dead doesn't mean that your emotions automatically change. So I don't know if I'm grieving with anger. I just, you know, I can't, just because he's dead doesn't mean that I can say, oh, all those feelings are gone.
Yeah.
And so she's saying I'm wrong, but I can't change that.
Right, right. And yes, that's very honest of you to say sometimes there are people who are like, you know, we
Yeah.
can make our comments. I've often heard that the best way forward if you are a spiritual person is to pray for that person.
Except I'm not spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is not, you know, I wish I was, but I'm not.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think you need to maybe take some time. I think it's a good thing that you're talking to your daughter about it, because the honest feelings are coming out. This is exactly how you feel, and you're not pretending. And I think that's one way of getting rid of those angry feelings towards a person, is by talking it through. And remember, no two of us grieve the same way. And we shouldn't try to convince anyone that our way of grieving is the best way forward. Yeah. So I think you're acknowledging your feelings. You know, there are some negative feelings. That's okay. You know, that's who you are, and has been your experience with this person. And you know, but at some time you let it go. If you can, you know, go through some ritual where, you know, you're tossing the stone into water and just let it go. Because we don't want to go around just, you know, bottled up with angry feelings. It hurts us deep inside. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And so for your own growth, for your own comfort, if there are ways you can let that piece go, let it off.
Yeah, I kind of have, but
Yeah, good.
but I'm not willing to say that, you know, oh, he was a great guy, blah, blah, blah. No, this is, you know, this is the way it was. And-
Yeah.
But I
is
love
how-
him. I still honestly love him.
Yeah.
There are things about him that
Yeah.
were fantastic,
Yeah.
but
And I think that's being a human being. You know, none of us are perfect,
no.
and some of us further from it. But I think the important part is that we accept that. We don't expect, our expectations don't have them too high of people. People are people. People are human beings. There are things that I have done in my life that I'm not proud of, or that may have hurt someone along the way. But each day I try to do better, and that's the most any of us can do. Another
I was
share?
just going to say, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I actually went to a person who talks to the dead
Mhm.
and had an experience with the person that I lost. And that seemed to really help a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's not someone who advertises or anything, it's just a personal thing, and
Yeah.
it really, really helped.
Yeah, I totally, I have many people share that with me, where they go to a person that connects you with your loved one that has passed. Many, many people find that very helpful, and you want to go to someone that's trained and has experience doing it, and look at their credentials and make sure it's a genuine person, because that's it's very specialized work.
And what kind, I couldn't hear, but not to hear.
She was saying that she went to someone that connects you with the dead. I don't know what the name of the person is.
Oh, medium?
Kind of like a medium, yes.
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 Yeah, right. Yeah, I've heard that many times,
It's
yeah.
really helped, yeah.
Mhm. Very helpful. Because when we lose someone, we're always looking for those signals to see, are they okay? Does that mean they're happy? We want them to be happy, and we want them to be safe, just like we wanted for them when they're here on earth. Now, I didn't forget your question back there about, you were saying about people, you feel that they don't want to talk about it anymore, and you feel shut off. What do you do in that circumstance? What have you done?
I just stopped. I
Yeah.
mean, because, I don't want these friends to feel that, like, I'm pushing it on them.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the feeling I get.
Yeah.
And I just kind of stopped, because figure, well,
You know by people's body language.
yeah,
They're no longer listening. They're no longer present for you. And one thing that that's where support groups are very, very, very helpful. Grief support groups, because they're run by a facilitator who's trained in running groups. And in that group, one of the roles of the facilitator is to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to share what they want to share. Some people might talk more, some people might speak less. That's okay, and that will always be the case. Some people are just more outgoing, and some people just more reserved in groups, and that. We keep our groups very small. We keep them to around 6 to 8 when we meet in person. So, and we usually meet for an hour and a half. So it is an opportunity, and so everyone is at the same level, you're just sharing. You probably don't know anyone else in the group. You will get to know them, however, and you don't know their loved ones that they have passed. And a facilitator should be always able to make sure that you have had an opportunity to share what you came to that group with in that moment in time. Yeah. Not a lot you can do really about, people that dismiss it and move on. Right after somebody passes, we are inundated with people that want to support us and help us and help us on that journey. But that fades pretty quickly. That's very normal as people go back to their own lives and their own work and all of that, You are very much, it's a lonely journey. Grief is a lonely journey, yeah. You're on your own for a lot of it. But we all, I hope, have those special people in our life, whether they be family, friends, or co-workers, or whatever it might be, that we can trust and talk to. Hopefully we have just that small number of people. Like, it doesn't have to be just about grief. People that we've connected, like, and shared, like, oh, I'm going through this crisis at home right now, and my daughter won't go to school, and, you know, can I just talk to you about it? You know, just share it, and, you know, what they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. Yeah. So, groups might be a good outlet there. Okay. Talking so long, my computer turned.
I like that last name. That's my last name.
Oh, is it?
And there aren't many of us, believe me.
No.
And I've never met her before.
Isn't that small world, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you use the apostrophe?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're exactly the same.
O apostrophe D E A.
Capital O apostrophe capital. You gotta
Yep, yeah.
spell it out,
Well,
otherwise
and
people
you
get it
have
wrong.
relation yet in Ireland.
That very possibly,
should.
but there's a lot of O'Days in Ireland, what I've heard.
Yeah, down the south. Yeah,
It's like Smith, Jones,
yeah.
but just New York, I think there's quite a few, Chicago. We had a reunion.
Okay, very often we come into grief and we think, you know, it starts here, our grief, after somebody passes, and it ends here. Wow. It's not like that at all. And we have to lower our expectations. It's much more like this yarn, kind of just tangled, because some days were good, some days were better. You might come and say, you know, I'm doing well today, I'm having a good day. Tomorrow can be exactly the opposite. That's just the nature of grief, and we just need to stay with it and find the people in our life that can help us. So, there are many common reactions to grief, and this is not a conclusive list. There are many, many more ways. What I like to say is that grief impacts us physically, socially, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. So if we take a look at this, we have tightness in our chest and heaviness in throat, and we have some mood changes, which is very common after grief. What part of us is that affecting us? It's affecting our physical being. You know, there could be loss of appetite, loss of sleep, overeating, undereating. All of those are sleep disturbance is a huge one for people. Yeah. And so there are just the physical reactions we can identify. Some emotional ones maybe, examples of emotional ones would be like, let me think, mood changes, anxiety, depression. Yeah.
I have a question. Now, they say that broken heart syndrome actually exists.
For some people that is very, very true. Very often you see couples that have been married and together long periods of time passing close to each other. That's a broken heart.
Yeah.
And it might be just, you know, like, it's not a physical broken heart, but it's an emotional broken heart, and that you kind of give up on living. I don't want to be around if my loved one is not there, and, you know, my life is over too. Or there might be, you know, just a willingness, I just want to go, and people pray or want that in their life. I just want to go to that this person is no longer here.
I just have one more question. My dad had Alzheimer's. So the thing is with him, we grieved when that happened because he forgot everybody. And then when he passed, it was another grief, but it wasn't as as hard.
Yeah.
Because we lost him before that.
Yeah.
And that happens with a lot of people where you lose that loved one, they're still there physically.
Yeah. Or there might be a diagnosis of illness, for example. It's a very, there's a lot of grief at the diagnosis. And your grieving process for many people starts then. Or it's a long-term illness, for example, like your Alzheimer's or other illnesses and diseases. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. One thing I want to highlight there, that a lot of people come to me and they talk about, I can't remember anything. I forget what I'm doing. I go upstairs to get something I can't remember. And this is worse, they may say, since my loved one died. And what that person, it's a real diagnosis. It's not just some made-up thing, but they're experiencing what we call brain fog. Because grieving takes so much time, it takes an extraordinary amount of energy. Any one of us that have lost someone, you remember the tiredness and the exhaustion around it, yeah? This is for real for people, that our minds are so consumed with that loss. When I have lost someone, the latest person in my life was one of my sisters, and I did things like, I went into work one day and left the car running. I just got it frightened me. It really frightened me. But you have to be so be careful, take a lot of care after the loss of someone, because your mind is distracted, very distracted. And in particular, safety on the roads is a huge one. Yeah. I remember after my mom passed away, and this is many years ago, 3 of our family members had car accidents. Just thankfully, fortunately, nobody had serious injuries, but that had never happened in the past. And we were young. She passed over 30 years ago, so we were young, like teenagers and that, and it just really was a wake-up call. And I'll always remember that, and I share it with people about being extremely careful after an immediate loss, because you're consumed with that loss. Whether you're paying attention to that or not, it's there. Yeah. So I reassure people, no, you're not losing your mind. There's nothing permanent happening here. It's just that all your physical, emotional, spiritual, every piece, all your energy is going into grief, and normal things become more cumbersome and more difficult to accomplish throughout the day. It gets better in time. What other experiences? We talked a lot about these, questioning the meaning of life. That we could describe that as a spiritual reaction to the loss of someone. Feeling of this grief is taking too long, will it ever come to an end? Many people ask that, am I going to feel better 6 months from now? Likely you will, but there are no guarantees. It's different for all of us, that experience. So there's a lot more on there, but I'm not going to go through, because we kind of talk about them as we're going along. And what are some things? Let's give us one interesting one. Oh, I want to touch on grief and COVID. You know what it was like during COVID. Was the centre even open here? It was
Not
open?
for a while.
For a while, yeah.
Not for a while. They shut down for maybe 2 months.
Yeah, yeah. So what did COVID mean for all of you?
Isolation.
Isolation, yeah. Worry, fear. Yeah. What next? What if I get COVID? What happens? You know, the social isolation is going to take us a long, long, long time to get over. I think it had a detrimental and serious effect on people, more than what we currently realize, or that we're now like, okay, the numbers are down, we're back to normal. We certainly are not back to normal at all, not at all. And I don't think we'll see that normal. That normal, it'll be a different normal. And I'm no expert in that field, but that's my feeling on it. My heart breaks for people that have lost people during COVID, because I hear about that not being able to get to see people, watching a person through a window, saying their goodbyes, not being able to hug, touch, be with that person. It's just horrible experiences. I even had somebody in yesterday, and it was just January of this year, when her husband passed away at the VA hospital, and she didn't see him. He had COVID. She didn't see him for the final 10 days, until the 10th day, when he was very close to death. They allowed herself and his daughter and sister into the hospital. Oh, so difficult, so difficult. And she's like, you know, and she was a nurse herself, and she said, oh, you know, I think I could have given him better care, paid him more attention. You know, that really adds to our grief. And so I think we have a tendency in society, just we get over one thing and we jump on to the next thing and jump on, but we don't really sit back and talk about how this impacted us and how it continues to impact us in our daily lives. Yeah. So a lot of things went on with people, you know, that really, really, really made grief so difficult, and the loss of someone close to them during COVID. Just as what I said, isolation, loss of traditional and the family rituals, whatever you do as a family or as a community, or around the loss of someone, having a burial, for example, or cremation and spreading the ashes, all of that was changed, very changed. A lot of people did not attend funerals, or you weren't allowed to, because there were restrictions in churches and so on and so forth. So COVID was a lot more than just these masks and staying 6 feet apart. It deeply affected us. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you support others in grief? Well, some of these we all know. Some of these are just a reminder. Just listen. Be present. Sit with them. And when you do sit with them, you're probably not as guilty as this as younger people. Maybe put their phones away. Don't be distracted by other things. Sit in a way that shows that you're open and willing to hear them. Open yourself up physically, you know. Lean in towards that person. I mean, now we begin to connect as opposed to find kind of wandering. Stop fiddling with your coffee cup, or like I do all the time, and just the physical way you do that is very important, to feel that connection. Sit close. Ask a person, is it okay if I rub your hand or your shoulder, or are you okay with that? Just being patient, be patient. let them share what they want to share as opposed to what you have experienced. It's not about you at that moment in time. It's about that other person who is grieving, and they deserve your time and your attention and your confidence. That's one reason people often don't share a lot, is because they feel that it will be talked about outside. So you want to provide a safe, a confidential, a welcoming space. Hold that space with the person. Very important. You don't try to fix, well, none of us have the ability to fix it. You know, no matter what degree we have from colleges or anything like that. We have no, but we are willing to be with their pain and be wherever they're at on the journey. Even if that means repeating the story over and over, it's okay. This is the way people heal, is sharing that story. Ask questions, you know, ask to see a photo. I often do that in the office. I'll ask someone to share a photo of their loved one, because it's great having a visual. You know, you kind of brings into your mind what that person looked like in everyday life, and helps to relate. Help them identify tasks that someone could do to help on their own. People say, you know, let me know if you need something. Let me know if I can help. I would encourage you to reach out and let people help. It makes them feel good. You know, we all are willing and love to help if we can. And it doesn't matter what that chore is. I can wash your windows. Can take your dog for a walk. I can pick up some groceries. I'm going there anywhere. I'm going there anyway. So you make it feel like it's not a chore to do it for other people, but just a willingness out of love and friendship and care. And that's what the world is about. You might make a list with that person, you know, like people are so overwhelmed about, oh, there's bills to be paid. I want to make sure credit cards are cut off. I want to make sure the phone is transferred, the house is transferred, the apartment, condo, whatever it might be. People are overwhelmed with those type of tasks after somebody passes. And so it can be a great help if someone says, you know, and they have to be done. They really do, because you keep paying for them if they're not done. It might be helpful to say, why don't I bring over, you know, a pie, or can I bring over a little food, and it'll give you the time then to spend on making those phone calls that need to be done, or what are things in the house that are bothering you? Like windows, that's one for me. Dirty windows bother me. So, if any of you are willing to come over and do the windows, you're hired. Plus I don't like doing them either. Yeah. But what are some things you could ask? What are some examples?
Early on, my wife and I lost somebody, and at the funeral, people, I noticed don't give advice, and that's so smart.
Yeah.
People would come up and say the weirdest things. Oh, they're in a better place.
Oh.
A better place would be right
Yeah.
here with me, thank you very much. But we also understood that they were saying something out of a source of love.
Yeah.
They cared. It's just what they were saying was stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's a question I have. What do we say?
Well, what I say, if you don't feel comfortable saying something, share that person. I don't know what to say. Be honest about it. Don't try and avoid that person. It's more hurtful. Don't meet that person and try and not say anything at all about the loss they're experiencing. Do acknowledge it. You know, that's all we expect from each other. And we know it's difficult. People say, I'm sorry for your loss, I'm sorry for your loss, out of, like, what else do you say? And they are genuinely and truly sorry that you're experiencing this sadness and loss in your life. Yeah.
We used to say, those two back there, and I both work at St. Mary's Care Center, have for years. And we used to have like a procession when
Yeah.
somebody passed away. And then one of the things that I would say and others would say is, thank you for allowing us to care for your family member.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
but
beautiful.
you'd have to change that some if you were to approach someone in that setting that was appropriate, but like you said,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
it was wonderful knowing, I don't know what you would say.
Yeah. And we still do that at Grace, we do the procession, and if for example, we use some music, favourite of the deceased or their family members, and share, kind of release them to the next place, wherever that might be.
They sang with us when my mother passed, and we took her out to the hearse.
Yeah, yeah.
We
Was she
all
at a
sang.
Grace, was she at a oh yeah.
We all
Yeah,
sang.
you know what that is, yeah. Yeah,
Was it-
sometimes we go over for those sometimes, and.
That was wonderful, they were wonderful.
It's heartbreaking, but it is. I think it's important. All of these rituals that we have, keep them. They're very important, you know. Like the tradition of wearing dark clothes, for example, that used to be, well, it was very prevalent in Ireland in the years past. But it also acknowledged to other people that you're in mourning, that you're in grief, and it gives them an indicator that this is what's going on in your life, and just to be extra sensitive to that. We try to get over it too quick. We try to think that, oh, let's move on. What's done is done. But let's just be patient. I think that's a huge piece with grief, is just being patient with the process. Yes, you said what not to say, so let's look at this. Anything with you can come up and do this slide. So anything with religious overtones we need to be careful about, unless you know that person very, very well. I would stay away from it. Anything that, as you said, anything that implies being dead is better than living. Comparing your loss, well, when I lost someone, I did this, that. In that moment in time, it's not about us, it's about the other person. Any statement that starts with it, at least they're happier now. What are you telling me? They weren't happy with me. At least they're not suffering, which may have some validity at some times. And any statements that try to say, oh, don't feel that, you were so caring and you were loving to that spouse all your life, or you should never feel guilty, or you shouldn't feel sad, or you shouldn't feel this, that, and the other. You got to feel whatever you want to feel in that moment in time. Could be angry, could be sad, could be overwhelmed, could be depressed, could be anxious. Whatever the feeling you're feeling is the right feeling in that moment. And we don't want to take that away from people. We just not want to journey with them, be with them. Yeah, that kind of covers that one.
So in the past, I have used the death of a loved one in my family to show sympathy. So I'm trying not to compare that, oh, my loss was greater than your loss.
Yeah, don't compare.
But to let it know, I know what you're feeling.
Right. Yeah, I do too. I do that too, you know. I mentioned to you that I was in Ireland up until last week for about 10 days. And I was there because I had a sister that passed away from cancer and it was her 1-year anniversary. So that's the reason that I was there for that. I do often. It's not like when I'm doing the one-on-one, it's not my story, but sometimes it just helps people to know that, wow, you experienced that too, or you know what this is about. And very often that's very, very helpful, you know, and especially if a person is saying something like, you know, am I going to feel like this forever? You might respond and say, I felt sad or angry or filled with grief for a long time. I still do, but it's getting easier in time. As we change as we adapt to life. And that's what I'm doing with my sister, for example, right now. Adapting to life with her not being there. You know, it's not getting over it. She's still right here with me all the time and will continue.
So what if you know of somebody who is stuck? You know, I mean, I have a brother who is stuck, and mom passed away 5 years ago, and he's still very much grieving. How do you suggest that they go to get counseling? Or, you know, what do you suggest that I do?
Yeah, great question. Does he talk to you about being stuck?
He doesn't say he's stuck,
Yeah.
but what he does shows me that he is.
Did you ever share with him that you feel that he's still
No,
grieving?
because I'm not sure what kind of reaction I would get.
Yeah, okay.
Is he by himself or is he have a wife?
Yeah, no, he's by himself. He lived with my mom for, well, his
Yeah.
entire life, and then she passed away. And, you know, some of the things that he does proves to me that he just hasn't coped well with it.
Right, right,
And
yeah.
I think that, you know, maybe talking to somebody,
Oh, it's so
And Grace would
so
really help.
welcome. And you can tell him about this presentation today that you were at and what you heard and what the services of Grace have and, you know, you could just try even one session.
What
There's
about-
nothing,
What about the brochure you're gonna give us?
yes, I have those here for you.
Would that help?
Yeah, I mean, that just lists what we do and that, and yes, certainly sharing that was, and there was someone here from a Grace and give them even my name, you know, or just tell them to call and ask for the person with the accent, Irish accent. There aren't too many of us, there are not too many of us there, might help, or,
we're together.
oh, you're together, all right. The other thing is that, you're okay.
Actually, I don't need one,
Yeah.
because actually I am doing reading for the police right now.
Now, and my friends have to be here. The other thing, do you,
When, you know, it's different. You know,
I've got a-
you know, it's
a question for her, so I just
different ballgame, you know.
my other question to you is, do you honor your mom's loss or passing in any way?
You mean as a family?
As a
or-
family, or you and your brother, or,
Well, you know, Memorial Day, flowers on the grave.
yeah, does he participate in that?
Oh, yeah, well, and what, you know, some of the things he does is he'll buy a dozen roses in the middle of winter and put them on her grave. And, you know, he really can't afford that,
Yeah,
but it's all part of how he feels.
yeah, It's
He
so-
still has
so
her
beautiful.
perfume, and once in a while he'll
yeah,
just spray that in the air and
Yeah.
smell it.
right.
And,
They are
You know, I
coping
feel for
mechanisms
it.
and they're healthy coping mechanisms, you know. I mean, our rational self would say, oh, please don't spend all that money on flowers in the middle of winter when they're going to be gone in an hour, you know, but if it brings people comfort, you know, or maybe this time of year it might be some more like spring-like flowers that might be hardier, but I think he needs to do those things. Spray the perfume, bring the flowers. But it would probably just be so helpful to open up more about it.
I had a friend that, married couple, I knew the man, but the mother died of the wife, and the wife could never get over the death of her mother, and it ended in a divorce because,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
she just could not accept it,
Yeah.
that her mother passed away, so, I mean, then how much help do you need to give that person,
Yeah.
you know, to try to get you over the hump,
Yeah.
you know, of that?
We see that quite frequently, the divorce, particularly in the circumstances of the loss of a child. Because if you've two individuals grieving totally different from each other, it does build a wall. Because you might be, you know, feeling sad, and your spouse might be saying, you know, let's stop talking about it. And you don't, that's the last thing you want to hear. You want to be able to continue to talk. Or they're like, you know, well, we have to get on with life now. And some people, that's exactly how they experience and they process loss. They do it that way. So when two people, I think the first step is that we acknowledge that you and I are grieving differently. And that's okay. And then I might have to find the support that I need to help me cope, because that other person, your spouse or partner or whatever, may not have that emotional capacity. Doesn't talk about feelings. How common is that? Very common, yeah. Just doesn't talk about feelings. They can list 5, I'm afraid, I'm sad, I'm whatever. There, that's it. But do not relate to anything deeper than that, and say, or don't know how to respond. Say if you share, oh, I'm having a really bad day, I'm feeling depressed and just about the loss of so and so. They're like, yeah, okay, sorry about that, and move on. Well, it's not really helping you all that much.
And do you ever get over it, you know, like your brother? I mean, you know, it's, you go on every day, it may ease up every day, but in back of your mind, it's still there.
Yeah. And I try to avoid that word, get over. I don't think you ever get over it.
Yeah.
I think you adapt. But the experience and the love and the relationship you had will always be there. At the same time, it does seem from what you're observing that your brother may be stuck, and people get stuck in grief. And that's when often we have to reach out to services for help. Because I'm sure you've tried and tried and tried in several ways to help him move beyond that. And he's
Or
not.
you don't know really what to do.
Yeah.
You know, we
Mhm.
kind of just watch it happen and wait for that moment when he can move on. But, you know, like you said, it affected his health, it
Yeah.
affected his employment,
Yeah.
the whole bail of
Yeah.
it. And you
Mhm.
just feel like until you deal with it,
Yeah.
it's not going to improve.
Yeah. Sounds like counseling may be very helpful if you can get him there. Yeah. But try, yeah. And I hope it works, and I'd love to work with him if he comes to the Grace Grief Center. But I'm not saying that the Grace Grief Center is the only place you can go either, you know. But I don't know of too many grief centers that operate in the area other than a Grace. Some places like churches do have good groups as well that people find helpful, and they might be more familiar with. They're familiar going to that church, so it seems like it's not as daunting to go to a group there or work with someone. All right, I'm conscious of the time. It's after 2, and you were just wonderful. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments, for being here. And I hope you have found something in it that has been helpful to you this afternoon, and that you go out and share with some other person or people in your life. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it. It was great. Thank you.